Mike on Much Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Vierman. We are here with our friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman, as well as our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. And joining us as always is Erica, working the dials. Later in the show, we will be talking to Craig Boa, who is a hairdresser from Edmonton who has been inside the NHL bubble, taking care of all the NHL guys. We will talk about what that experience has been like, how he got there, and all sorts of stuff. But that is later in the show. But before we get to anything, I want to say a big congratulations to Shane Cunningham, our pop culture aficionado, and his wonderful wife, Alex, on their award nomination for Best Podcast for This Family Tree.
Hey!
Congrats, man.
Yeah, man. Hey. Podcast of the year, man.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, it's Mom Pod of the Year. It's weird because this is called Mike on Much Mom, but it's
very confusing
for like motherhood podcasts. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
We can't even get nominated in our own namesake category. That's really exciting, though. That's awesome, man. Congrats.
But guess what, Mike? And you're the only person who will even know who this is. But that's really getting me excited. Shannon Sossaman's coming on the pod.
Whoa! Oh my God! Holy shit! Yo,
I
set
know.
it up for our listeners so they can be excited for you. I'm so excited for you. I'm actually nervous for you. Do you think you'll be able to handle it?
I think so. Like I'm doing so many of these. I'm getting like pretty acclimated to just talking to whoever. But that one will test my nerves because Shannon Sossaman is the person I've had the biggest crush on since I was 15 years old, probably maybe 16 years old.
Who is she?
So
Do I have to Google
she's
her?
from Rules of Attraction. She's in A Knight's Tale. She's probably one of the most attractive people in the world.
Shit.
Is this how you're going to do your intro for the...
Sossamon.
Sorry,
She was in a cool band called Warpaint. Shannon Sossaman. She's in A Knight's Tale. She's the princess. She worked with Heath Ledger. 40 Days, 40 Nights. She's the one that Josh Hartnett is trying to sleep with.
Okay. Let me see here. Oh, Sossaman. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So all of a sudden, Max wants to come on the pod. And, do you need a co-interview or a producer for this one?
I've been known to do that.
Yes, Shannon Sossaman. She spells it with a Y. Y-N. Shannnyn.
I like the idea that all of our listeners right now are also on their phones looking up Shannon Sossaman.
Okay, my question though, Shane, is how jealous is Alex going to get? Because Alex famously has a jealous streak, and if this is the woman of your dreams, like how is this going to go?
Oh, she's pretty jealous. Yeah. Like it's crazy. Like she's almost like mad that we got the interview.
This brings up actually a really good question. So like, because I know how much you, how strongly you felt about Shannon Sossaman, and we've all had like these crushes that we've had since we were 13 or whatever. I'm wondering what all of our sort of like, it would shake you to like interview somebody that basically you've pined over since you were a teenager. It's such an interesting dynamic. Does anyone come immediately to mind for you two, Erica or Max?
Yeah, definitely. Tiffany Amber Thiessen.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's an obvious one, but she'd be up there. Brandy, maybe? I was really into Brandy when I was really in grade 6.
I like Monica. That's so funny.
Interesting.
It would work out then for
Tyra
you,
Banks,
the four of you. Yeah. Tyra Banks.
No, I like her.
Oh, yeah. She'd be scary. Intimidating, you know.
You know, I asked her, I think I told this on the pod, but she passed me at the...
I was with you.
I was with you. Go, Mike. You could probably tell that.
It was like hilariously sad.
This is like 2 years ago, too.
Yeah. We were standing there in the hall. We were doing something for the pod, and we're kind of like hanging out. And she's like coming down the hallway, and Max gets like really excited. He's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna go for it!" And he's kind of got the phone out, and he's like, "Tyra Banks passed." She's got like a bunch of people around her. He's like, "Tyra," like puts the phone. He's like, "Photo," and she's like, "Can't, sorry," and just she didn't break her stride
She
at
didn't
all.
stop for a second. I respect that.
And then we couldn't do. You did, and we couldn't do anything but laugh. We both just exploded laughing. Like,
Yeah.
you thought it was hilarious. And it was like,
The same thing happened to me with Michael Wilbon, who I love, who's actually name dropped
Who's that?
in an R. Kelly song. Michael Wilbon, famous Washington Post sports writer. He's on TV all the time doing basketball games. And I was down in the tunnel, and this was during last year's playoff run, and Wilbon's there outside of the Raptors locker room. And I'm like, "Hey, Wilbon, maybe time for a little photo." And he just looks at me. He's like, "Not right now." And then he walks away.
He was working.
He was working. He was working. That's fair.
He was getting a scoop. Erica, who would be your person?
Probably Nick Jonas or Joe Jonas. Nick or Joe, yeah. Or Justin Bieber. Big old crush on Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Bieber would be really good.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
I'm again. It just feels like last week when we were talking about this. I'm racking my brain. There are certainly people that I've like had crushes on, and I know that Shane, we've talked about this a lot. Where you have the dream where you'll fall in love with a celebrity, and so the dream can last as many as like 10 years, let's say, or 3 months. Because time is funny in dreams, and you wake up and you have this sort of like profound sense of loss because you felt. I remember I fell in love with like Jenny Garth from 90210. She played Kelly, and I woke up and then I wasn't with her anymore, and I remember feeling like this profound sense of sadness because I was like, oh, the love of my life. And again, I'm like, I don't know, like fucking 16 or something, but I wouldn't like be shook to interview her. I'm trying to think if there's like I guess like I've had a big crush on Natalie Portman at times in my life.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I knew that. I feel like I knew that you loved Natalie Portman.
Yeah. That's not an original crush by any means, but I don't know if like interviewing her would be like weird for me. I don't know. Cause anyway, so I don't have like a definitive answer, not like Shane with Shannon Sussman, because you've been talking about this one for like 2 decades, brother.
Well, yeah, I was just talking about it. We did the pedestal like pre-COVID times, and I was still going on and on about it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, let's get to topics because we got a lot going on. We got to talk to Craig later on about cutting hair in the NHL bubble, who's a friend of Max. So let's just get to topics and then we can keep it moving. Huge story with numerous, almost countless implications to America, to the politics of America, to people's personal lives. And that is Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing away recently. She's succumbed to cancer, which obviously, if you follow these things at all, opens up a seat on the Supreme Court. Trump, who is the president currently, will most likely fill this before there's an election in November. There's a whole sort of mechanism here by which this is like sort of become very controversial. And that is when Obama was in the last year of his presidency. There was a seat open on the Supreme Court and he wasn't allowed to fill it. Basically, the Republicans stonewalled him from filling that, saying in an election year, we should allow the next president to fill the seat. So they basically stonewalled it until they got the next president. We are now in a very similar situation. And now all of those people, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, these Republicans that felt that way, felt very strongly about that 4 or 5 years ago, now are saying, no, now's the time to move. Trump should be allowed to choose Ruth Bader Ginsburg's replacement. So that's where it's at. It's obviously become a huge story in American politics. So I guess ultimately what we're going to talk about is what responsibility do we have to listen to the sort of dying wishes of public officials? Because it's been reported that Ruth had said that her sort of dying wish was that they do not replace her until after the election. Basically, let the next president. And again, if Trump wins again, then he can do it. He might very well win in a couple months, and then he can make the choice. Then she said, just let the election go. Clearly, they're not going to do that. And then we'll also sort of talk about the idea of sort of the ethics of, exactly what Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham did, which is basically they played by one set of rules 5 years ago, and now they've completely changed those rules because it benefits them. So first, I don't know, Maxie, what were your thoughts when you said the idea of sort of respecting the dying wishes of a public official on their way out? Yeah,
it's all this is really good fodder because we all have our blinders on to a degree depending on what side you're rooting for, and in these situations, I always try my best to put the shoe on the other foot and go, okay, was there some instance where the left overstepped in some way? But to your point, Mike, you texted about this, and I thought you were kind of making the point that Republicans sort of have a win at all cost attitude, and we'll break the rules because as long as we win and get our way, that's the point of politics. This is just gamesmanship. But I'd say that the right would probably say there's been many instances of Democrats or liberals not exactly playing by the rules either. So that's
moving the goalposts themselves.
Yeah, moving the goalposts themselves. But I guess when I was thinking about like what responsibility do we have to listen to the dying wishes, it's a good question because of course, when I saw that statement come out, I go, of course we have to listen to her, and any decent person should listen to her. But then I started thinking, trying to be a little bit more objective. And if it was a conservative judge that said, okay, don't replace me and then had some demand before he passed away or she passed away, I'd kind of probably roll my eyes a little bit. So I'm really trying to get some sort of historical perspective when it comes to like evaluating this particular situation. But the part that feels undeniably egregious is that Lindsey Graham, who's one of like the head Republicans in the Senate, he's from South Carolina, he's like, you can quote me on this. This is back in 2016. If the same situation comes up in 2020, we shouldn't vote on it until there's a new president. And now he's breaking that. And McConnell basically said the same thing too. So that all makes me very disheartened about the current state of affairs in America. There's not one sort of hopeful note that seems to be happening, with the exception of maybe Susan Collins, who's the Republican from Massachusetts, who said that we should wait to vote on it. But Mike, yeah, do you want to speak to that, Mike? Because I think I've heard you talk about that a lot in the past, is how the goalposts move with Republicans. And there was actually a great Onion headline today, which made me think of you. I'll pull it up here. Democrats take off gloves, fold them neatly, put them in a nice little box. Yeah. Mike, what do you think?
Well, the thing that interests me just sort of in general is the idea of how we frame the way that we go about things. So something like, say, like integrity or your word, or like, in the moment when, 5 years ago, when they were like, we can't let Obama put another sort of, say, liberal leaning judge in the Supreme Court, they made like a very sort of strong stand where they said, no, it should be the next president that is allowed to pick the sort of seat, because Obama's on his way out. In a vacuum, or sort of in its self-contained, you go, yeah, that actually kind of makes sense in some ways. Do you know what I mean? I guess I could believe that if they were doing that argument in good faith. I guess the thing is, it's like, so if you acquiesce to that and you go, okay, you know what, we'll do that. What you would hope is that when you get to a similar situation 4 years later, they then sort of go, yeah, these are the rules. Let's kind of abide them. The thing is, it's like, if you're not concerned with the perception of sort of like breaking your word or whatever integrity is, it's like you can really kind of get away with anything. And so what we've seen in this like last little bit is like this sort of lack of accountability, sort of like on all levels, meaning like, if you're willing to sort of, you know what I mean, forego the idea of being embarrassed or having shame about lying to get what you want because the ends justify the means, well, then you'll kind of get anything you want if there is no sort of repercussions. That's what it seems like right now. And I'm fascinated by the idea of like how you even fight that. Like, how do you, like, if the rules of the game are constantly sort of changing, it's like, I guess you just have to adapt and sort of like move forward to push your agenda. And by the way, we've talked about this before with politics, right and left. It's like, there's just as many people that feel very strongly about living in a society that Trump represents as people that feel like living in a society that the left represents. And ultimately it's like a majority rule thing. It's like, do enough people feel this way? Let's vote these people in. So it's like, I get it that side's going to fight for theirs, and then the other side's going to fight for theirs. But I just like, if there's not an established set of rules, it's just like there's like a football game being played, and it's like one side is playing by one set of rules, the other side's playing by another set of rules. How can you even have a game? Yeah, it's the thing I find confusing.
I'm also concerned, maybe just the personalities that exist in the States when it comes to politics that you don't see as much in other places. But it's just incredible how a few sociopaths can really change the course of history. Do you know, like, obviously Trump and his like no sort of respect for any traditions or sense of decorum or just sense of, as you say, the rules of the game of politics. He's really turned things upside down. Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham. And I wonder if those guys don't exist, are we living in a different world, right? And when those guys go away, does the world go back to a more saner place? Because, it's like we were in Toronto, we were living under Rob Ford, and that was kind of chaos. And obviously it's a different situation there. But Rob Ford was voted out, and now we have John Tory, and things have sort of gone back to normal to a degree. So I always wonder, I'm like, is the way this is going to turn around is if people with sociopathic tendencies or no sense of fairness and playing by the rules, if they get voted out and things can kind of get back to a general sense of decency for the next term. Do you think there's something to that, or do you think things are too far along in America that, all the gloves are off forever and it'll be win at all costs?
I think it depends on like the playbook. Like it's like anything, like in sports leagues, you see it's like a copycat league. Like, so like if Trump has sort of established this new smash mouth way of just sort of getting things done and, things be damned, will sort of the people that come after just go like we'll just kind of like, we'll keep doing this until it doesn't work. And we're going to see if checks and balances work. But I wanted to throw to Shane. Shane, it looked like, did you have any thoughts on anything? It looked like you wanted to jump in and say something.
Oh, it just seems like isn't people lying about what they say they're going to do in politics the most common thing? Like, is this that weird of a thing?
This is a
seriously,
great point.
Isn't that like a normal thing to do? Like on left and right?
See, this thing, we all accepted sort of a version, like this sort of like, I don't know what the word is, but the idea that the fantasy of what politics is, meaning like, well, this politician is like, they're a good one. They really care, but they're also backroom dealing. They're doing all of the sneaky shit that people on the other side are doing. It's just they dress it up better. Mm-hmm. It's more presentable. It's got a little bit more decorum. So to Shane's, to what I think you're saying, Shane, is it's like, it's all the same shit. All politicians are the same. It's just one is sort of dressed in a way that's more palatable than sort of this smash mouth way that Trump and the right are now sort of getting through their agenda.
Yeah. And to Max's point, like if Ruth was a huge piece of shit and then wanted on her deathbed to let the next president vote, and then Obama said, nope, I'm doing it now, we'd all be like celebrating, like Obama breaking that death wish is amazing because she was terrible.
Well, this is the other major thing, is the idea that I said in sort of the message to the pod group, is it's like, I'm also fascinated by the idea that like, we seem to as a society celebrate like like people that bend the rules and sort of like march to the beat of their own drum as like trailblazers and people that like should be celebrated because it's like, no, they broke the mold, they wouldn't conform, and that's why they got what they wanted. And we celebrate it in some people, but then in other people, if we find it like abhorrent, we find it like this sort of like really distasteful trait. And it's like, how do you decide when it's like acceptable in one person and sort of like, and then not in another? And someone might say, well, it's just human decency and you know it when you see it. But I'm just like, like you said, Shane, it's like to a large portion of people on the right, they find certain conservatives and like sort of their stick-to-itness, whether it's like, pro-life or whatever it is, they find that to be valiant and sort of worth breaking the rules and smashing through and all of that sort of thing that we celebrate people for sort of breaking the mold when it sort of fits our worldview.
But this isn't even a rule, right? It's just a death wish, right? Or a deathbed wish. Like, it's not like a hard and fast rule just because she said it on her deathbed.
It's a dying request. Yeah,
but you have to keep those reasonable, I think. Like, you can't just say like, oh, I don't want abortion to be legal, and then you die or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? You can't make it a law. But you know what I mean? Like, just because she said it, it's like they're breaking her death wish. It's like she was 87. Like, I'm not saying she deserved to die, but you don't have to obey every death wish from every person and act like it's the law and Trump is breaking some huge sacred thing.
Yeah, I'd say the argument that we have to obey her dying wishes probably doesn't hold up. But I'd say the argument that does hold up is that the Republicans did this very thing 4 years ago, and now they're contradicting themselves. And that's the most
that's just
part.
Politics, though.
But the reason why I disagree with you, Shane, is that, like, sure, I agree, politicians lie all the time, but to Mike's point, there's like a general sense of like rules that they should be playing with, and the Republicans,
but they only
in this
follow
case,
the rules when they're in their favor.
It's stepped over the line in a major way. Sorry, what you say?
They only follow the rules when they're in their favor. So it's like, oh, they followed the rules here.
No, but okay, but here's the thing. It's like Trump is talking about not obeying the results of the election. He's basically said if he loses the election, it's because of voter fraud. And he's alluded to like not leaving the White House. This has never been suggested by any politician ever. In fact, Al Gore, for the good of the country, even though he was winning in the vote and very close in the recount in Florida back in 2000, he said, for the good of the country, so things aren't chaotic, I'm going to step aside. Peaceful transfer of power. And so Trump basically does things on a daily basis basis that any other president would be ridiculed and probably impeached for, and he just kind of skates.
Oh, he has no integrity for sure.
I was also thinking about a situation that came up when Obama was the president regarding Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and that should she retire now, knowing that she's had some health issues, and just to ensure that her seat is being filled by a progressive, a Democrat.
And some 40-year-old that can do it for the next 40 years.
Yeah, and you secure the court. And Obama knew this is like very important to like the sort of the future of the country is having people on that side of the aisle occupy the court if you care about, female rights and protecting, the disenfranchised and minorities. And she didn't. She said, I think they all thought Hillary was going to win. And then if she wanted to retire in the following 4 years, she could do it then. Of course, history turned out much different. And I was thinking about, her personality type. And she's clearly one of the most strong-willed people that's ever existed. I started to watch a little bit of her movie on the basis of sex, her story. And just, she was the only woman, or she's one of few females in the Harvard Law School. She was raising a child on her own as her husband was sick. Like, her story is absolutely incredible. And no one is going to tell her what to do because she's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, do you know how? She's an icon. She's an icon. And she probably felt that way before she was an icon too. Like, I'm outworking you. I know probably what's best and get out of my way. But it is interesting to see the thing that makes somebody great. And I've said this many times before is also the thing that makes them have blind spots or the things that makes them less than desirable. And I was thinking about other greats like Michael Jordan, who probably didn't need to come back and play for the Washington Wizards, but he thought he could do it. And I'm fucking Michael Jordan and I'm going to be Michael Jordan. And then he kind of fell in it. And Willie Mays did this as a baseball player. Like, he kept going and going and going.
This is the thing. It's like the hubris that got them to where they are.
Yeah.
Meaning like this sort of this inherent sort of belief and this sort of outlandish trust in their ability to always do it is what makes them icons. But then ultimately it can be this thing that makes you stick around too long or overestimate your abilities at a certain point.
He was still really good for the Wizards though. He was really good.
he was good.
Yeah,
he was
underrated.
He was good for the Wizards. But then, when you think about, your legacy as a public facing person, you go, it was cool that he played for the Wizards and he had a couple of awesome moments, but it would have been kind of awesome if he had just retired as a Bull. And I think there's other examples of people who overstay their welcome in a way that ultimately reflects badly on their overall career. No, if not badly, less than ideal. And obviously this is a very serious situation, and her decision to stay on, which was a decent decision at the time. I think everybody thought Hillary was going to win. So it's not like I begrudge her. And obviously she's a titan. She's accomplished so much for that country. But it did just get me thinking about this idea of like, who are the people, whose hubris, as you say, Mike, kept them around a little too long, and who are the people that kind of bow gracefully and know when it's time to walk away. I just think that's like an interesting thing to think about.
I think it helped with Jordan's legend even more. The fact that he even came back. Oh yeah.
That's a hot take. Why? How so? I feel like that's the one thing that they always knock him on. They didn't even mention it in the fucking doc.
Well, just because he's so competitive, it just goes to show he really loved the game and wanted to do it. Like, he could have left perfectly and he still came back, and he he was still scoring like 21 points a game, and that was considered a failure for him. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Well, two things. I think he left as like an icon that was like unassailable. And then when he came back, it was almost like an old guy that's trying to fight young kids on his lawn, where it's just like, it's like you're embarrassing yourself, but it's fine. And to your point about the 20 points a game.
It was way better than that. Like, I watched YouTube edits of how good he was on the Wizards. It's like, he was very amazing.
He was good offensively. He couldn't guard anyone. That's why they didn't win any games. That was the problem. Is they would there were like, we don't have to get into the minutia.
This is such a classic Mike on Much pivot. We're trying to be smart people talking about RBG, and then it just ends up talking about Michael Jordan.
I'm just trying to talk about this stuff.
But yeah. Anyway, I mean, and again, here's what my thing is. This. So if we're gonna do this Jordan RBG thing, is I think Jordan can come back. If Jordan wanted to play right now at 50, like, that's a personal choice. If someone's willing to give him a contract play, man. Like, who cares what we think or what we want your legacy to be if you're Michael Jordan? If I'm Michael Jordan, I'm sitting around at 40 years old and I want to hoop in the NBA and someone's going to give you a contract to do it, go for it. Who gives a shit what writers think, what pundits think? If you're RBG and then this sort of opportunity arises where you're like, maybe I should retire so Obama can fill my seat, that actually has implications beyond her own sort of personal desires. Like, so she wants to stay because she's like, listen, I still have a voice. I want to have an opinion in matters that come up. I'm not done yet. I'm not ready to be on my way out. Mm-hmm. The difference is strategically her making that choice is actually going to now affect things for the next 50 years potentially, because her seat's going to get replaced by some young person that's literally going to hold her seat literally for probably almost our entire lifetimes. That's the sort of like strategic thinking that you need to have in that situation. And so there has been criticism, and listen, nobody wants to speak ill of anyone that's passed on, especially a fucking icon like RBG. But I think that's where the criticism that Max, when you talk about this, the writing and these people sort of bringing this thing up, that's what they're saying is they're saying like, it goes beyond just what Ruth wanted to do. It's not about just getting on a court and putting up 20 a game with the Wizards. It's basically, it's like, how's this going to affect women in 30 years from now? Those are the stakes of that game. And I think that's the difference, if that makes sense.
I was just trying to keep it to a debate on whether it made him more or less iconic. Like, I wasn't saying like, yeah.
It's true. No, it's... So wait, so Jordan, more iconic by coming back to the Wizards? Max? Erica?
Less iconic.
It made his legend grow so much bigger that he couldn't let the game go. He kept trying to leave the game, but he loved it so much he kept coming back.
Didn't he go to the MLB?
Yeah, he left to play baseball, and then he came back and he was still the fucking best player in the league.
He's all over the place. He should have just ended it with the Bulls.
Well, what if he just ended it when he went to play baseball, which a lot of people thought he was crazy to come back. And then he won 3 more championships in a row. So you got to kind of, for your own mental sanity, you got to try.
He's always said too, he was like, if we could have just got to the playoffs. So the theory goes that Jordan was basically even holding something a little back at his advanced age, because he was like, we just have to get that 8th seed and get me in the playoffs, and then I'm going to I got something left. We'll never know, of course.
Oh, I see. Interesting. He should come back now. Why not? Really just mix it up. Go to the bubble.
Mike Tyson's coming back. Hey, you hear that? Mike Tyson's coming back.
I did.
Oh, yeah.
Fighting?
Yeah, I heard
the fight, yeah. And apparently he's just as good.
We're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's get to the next one. That's fine.
All right, next topic. Guys, we are talking... Oh, former podcast, Annie Murphy, is not only a former podcast, but she is now Emmy Award-winning former podcast, Annie Murphy. What a damn run. The Emmys happened recently, and Schitt's Creek historically ran all major acting categories for a comedy. Eugene Levy won for Best Actor in a Series. Catherine O'Hara won for Best Actress in a Series. Dan Levy and Annie Murphy both won for Best Supporting Actor and Actress in a Series. It was it was historic, like I said. And honestly, like a huge, this is a big thing that we do in Canada is anytime somebody gets recognition in the States, we all sort of we hold it tight and we all own it like this collective national win. We've been doing this for forever, whether it's Jim Carrey or Justin Bieber or Drake. It's just part of who we are. But I think the Emmys this week were no different, and it was really exciting. I actually didn't watch the show, so I actually didn't find out. I think I went to bed early, but I ended up, it was on Twitter when I saw the next day where I was like, holy shit, Annie Murphy won an Emmy. That's so exciting. Because I think her and Dan were both people like Eugene and Catherine O'Hara are considered legends, obviously SCTV, these long sort of comedic careers. Everybody in comedy respects the hell of those two. It's I could see those two winning almost legacy awards for a body of work over decades. But I think the Dan Levy and the Annie Murphy ones where people were like, holy shit, this show really, really, really resonated with Emmy voters and has become this absolute phenomenon. What did you guys think? Shaney, what did you think when you saw the news?
Not much, because I've never seen the show before. But
it's no Shannon Sauceman. Yeah.
Have you watched the show before? Is it really that great?
Full disclosure, I watched 2 episodes before I interviewed Annie Murphy, and that's because I did research for the interview, and then I haven't seen it since.
I want to watch it now, though. It seems like it got better and better and better till it just was one of the best shows on TV. What about you? Have either of you two watched it?
Yeah, I've watched it a bit here and there. Lauren really likes it. And I remember thinking, because I've known Annie since she was like 20 years old, and because her partner Menno is the lead singer of Colorado. And I remember before we interviewed her, I remember thinking, oh, I'm so happy for Annie because it is impossible to be a career actor. And she had been, doing some commercial work, and she had been trying to do some of her own small films, like that she was like writing and directing herself. And then she got this gig on CBC, Schitt's Creek. And I remember thinking, Schitt's Creek, I don't like that name actually. Like I felt it was like kind of like vulgar or something. I was like, that's not for me.
Yeah, that's the word shit.
But I was like, cool. What?
I just said it had the word shit in it, but continue, sorry.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's fine. And
you finally pinpointed after all these years.
Like,
that's what I found distasteful
about it that was vulgar. No,
something smells fishy. But
you know how they spell it, though, right?
But I was really happy for her. But again, it's like when you hear about a television production out of Canada, you kind of go, okay, this might have a little shelf life for people that probably aren't in our demographic, that are probably the type to watch Corner Gas, or just like CBC folks often think of like people in Saskatchewan or something. Like I don't think, I know I'm stereotyping here, but I just didn't think it would be anything more than just like kind of a good, nice Canadian television show. And it's like, oh, a little career renaissance for Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara. That's cool. All good. But I had no sense that it would turn into what it was. And, when we've gone down to LA to record, I see Schitt's Creek billboards like around town. And obviously Dan Levy has, is a full blown like Hollywood star. And, they participated in the Barack Obama like graduation special earlier this spring, right?
Do you want to know something's interesting about how that show explodes in the States? And this is the value of relationships. Do you know this whole connection, Maxie?
No. Well, I know the Brad Schwartz connection.
So this is the thing. Mm-hmm. So Brad Schwartz, who is also a former podcast, I think maybe episode 3 or 4, who is the head of like Pop TV. He used to be the head of MTV and Much. Like a decade ago, whatever it was. And obviously they had a show called the Hills After Show or whatever. This is when Dan Levy was just like, he was a VJ essentially. And he hosted this after show with Jesse Cruikshanks. Dan and Brad developed like this strong relationship because Dan's this honored talent. Brad is like sort of running these two specialty channels here in Canada, MTV and Much. They both go their separate ways. Brad goes down to the States. He goes down to New York to work, I think, at MTV. He talks about it in the podcast. Eventually transitions down to California, ends up running like all of Pop TV. In the meantime, Dan Levy sort of creates this show with his dad, Schitt's Creek. They get the deal at CBC. Again, like Max said, it's a Canadian show. They do, I think, season 1, maybe even season 2. Brad, in the meantime, gets juice at Pop TV, becomes sort of the head. Then he goes, hey, Dan, my former, my friend, this guy that, I had on air for MTV. This show's pretty cool. We want to acquire it for Pop. They acquire it for Pop. This turns into a Netflix deal. And then it gets disseminated amongst around all of America. But that doesn't happen without those guys sort of making this strong connection sort of up in Toronto and then going to do their sort of separate things. And Dan ultimately staying in Canada and building the show at the CBC, and then them sort of flipping it into the States where Brad had migrated down.
And then this next step to it is the Netflix part of it, right? Because obviously Pop TV is was that a network? It's
like a specialty network. It's like a cable show,
Yeah,
cable
but it's
sort of
really
channel.
fascinating to see when these shows get picked up and like how that happens. Because getting on Netflix opens you up to such a wider audience. And I think that, I can imagine, had a lot to do with it just getting that much more well known and just being accessible to that many more people.
And by the time it gets to Netflix, there's like 5 seasons. So people can literally fall in love with it and then jump in like the 6th season, like in real time, now that they've fallen in love with these characters and these sort of very consumable, I think they're like 22 minute episodes, whatever it is. I'm not sure, but people do love it. I mean, I have to come around to it again. I've only seen episode 1 and 2 before the interview because I think only 2 episodes had aired when we interviewed Annie.
So my question though, for you two, because I know you guys are, television historians and have a really good sense of like the great TV shows over the last, 30 years, is as Canadians, I feel like, of course, there's been great moments like, Kids in the Hall or Degrassi or things that have sort of transcended our borders. But for the most part, we think of like Canadian productions as, quaint Canadian productions, and I don't know exactly how it stacks up to, Hollywood stuff. But between Letterkenny, which is getting Brad Pitt singing their praises, and Edward Norton was tweeting about Letterkenny the other day, and then Schitt's Creek, like, has Canadian television maybe been better than we've been giving it credit? But now, since shows are able to get on TV screens outside of the country, they're just being recognized more by non-Canadians, and so we go, oh, this is actually as good quality as anything else? Or do you think the caliber of those shows is actually a cut above, and that's what's making it famous?
I think it has to be the caliber, right? Like Jared Keeso is a really special guy.
But before there wasn't the internet and there wasn't streaming platforms. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if there's like I'm trying to think about what was a show that was on TV in the late 90s or 2000s that we liked.
Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, Trailer Park Boys actually probably got a lot of success from Netflix. But if Trailer Park Boys had come in the last 5 years, does that become a much bigger thing? Even though that's actually had a pretty good run. But is there other examples that you're like, oh, if this had existed now, would actually be doing what Schitt's Creek is doing?
No, we don't have that many great shows in Canada.
But we don't. That's my point. Is do we know that? Like, I'm trying to think. Like, what would have been like the CBC like quote unquote hit, like the Kim's Convenience, say. I know that's on right now, but like,
I would say like our biggest export of the last like 2 decades has probably been Corner Gas. You mentioned that. Like, Corner Gas is a very successful comedy. Yeah, but it's like, I don't know how that show lives in the hearts of like popular culture or younger people and all that stuff. Schitt's Creek, at this point, is undeniably the most successful Canadian export of all time. Like, as far as like awards recognition and like buzz, and we'll see how things go going forward. But it's not like, this is pretty unprecedented. But I can't think of any like past Canadian shows that stood out in a way that it's like, well, if they only had access to Netflix.
What about Road to Avonlea? You don't think Road to Avonlea would have a shot?
Didn't watch a lot of Road to Avonlea.
Ready or Not?
That was a good one. That one could have had a good life, I think.
Due South?
A good call. No.
Being Erica.
I feel like you're reading off a list.
I am.
No doubt.
Yeah, Degrassi. You mentioned Degrassi. Like, that was ginormous. But was that Canadian produced or just filmed in Canada?
No, that's Canadian produced.
Yeah,
was that ginormous, though?
That was pretty giant.
I feel like that was like kitsch in the States. Like,
yeah, it wasn't getting
Kevin
nominated
Smith
for
liked
shit.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think SCTV was another really big one and respected in the States. I'm not sure if it won any awards, but...
Yeah, I think like SCTV and Kids in the Hall are like obviously like our most like respected in the comedy world, like exports. But I don't like, it's not like they're SNL. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas like now Schitt's Creek is weirdly like in this category with like, The Office. Like, it's kind of insane. Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are going to start to talk about this 22-minute sitcom in the same conversation with like whatever you would consider sort of these classic sort of sitcoms. Like, it's now sort of entered this. Like, they just swept all of the comedy awards. That's never happened. Like, name the most famous. Frasier has never done that. Like, Cheers has never done that. Friends has never done that. Like, it's kind of insane.
So you're saying Little Mosque on the Prairie if it was made now?
I think it was made now.
Is Handmaid's Tale Canadian produced or just filmed here?
Filmed here.
Because there's lots of like good stuff that's filmed in Toronto, like Suits.
Yeah, no, that's different.
Yeah, those don't count.
Riverdale. Yeah, no, none of those.
Working Moms is having a pretty good run, I gotta say.
That's a great example of a show that I think is actually following in some ways the Schitt's Creek buzz. It feels like it's building the same way. It feels like the Netflix sort of renaissance is like getting people to really come to it. The next step will be to see if it's like it is recognized, by the Emmys or international awards as they just started shooting. Actually, I saw on Catherine Reitman, former podcast, Instagram. But yeah, it feels like that show has like a ton of the buzz that I started to hear about Schitt's Creek 3 years ago. I was actually kind of surprised when Schitt's Creek actually started to become big, like maybe it was 2 years ago when people started talking about it and tweeting about it. Like, big American people I follow on Twitter were tweeting about it. I was like, oh, I guess this is becoming a thing. I'm seeing that happen with Working Moms now, actually.
Do you think without the superstar parents like Ivan Reitman and Eugene Levy, these shows make it?
That's a great question as well. Well, we've been having this conversation now for almost 20 years, Shane. Like, I think that talent is undeniable. Like, the Strokes are all rich kids who got a bajillion, it's like the pathway to getting a record deal is obviously a lot more linear for a bunch of kids like that grew up in New York in wealthy families.
Mm-hmm.
But the songs are still amazing. Like the talent or
it's
how
the
you
horse
feel
to
about
water
the music.
analogy. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
no, do I think Dan Levy gets to make Schitt's Creek without Eugene Levy as his father? Does Catherine Reitman get certain opportunities if Ivan Reitman isn't her dad, et cetera, et cetera? Probably not. But ultimately, if the work is great, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people get opportunities that don't work out.
Yeah. Think about all the other children of Canadian celebrities like Rick Moranis or John Candy or Jim Carrey or whoever that we've never heard of that probably at some point were like, I'd like to be an actor. I'd like to make my own TV show.
Jason Priestley's had like 4 shows since 90210, Canadian produced, otherwise that just didn't work. You know what I mean? In one way or another, you know, and it's like people are going to get opportunities, but if it's not quality, then it's not going to really last. You know, there's always mitigating circumstances, but I think that what like Catherine Reitman's doing and what Dan and Eugene and their team are doing and all that stuff, like it seems like it's undeniable at this point. You know, it's like it speaks to people. You know, it's popular and it's visceral. People really connect with it. So proof's in the pudding, regardless of their lineage or the opportunity that they were sort of afforded.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, guys, let's move on to our conversation with Craig Boa, who, as I mentioned off the top, is a hairdresser from Edmonton, Alberta, who also owns Weekly Trim True. He has been inside the NHL bubble. We're going to talk about how he got there, what it's like in there, how he knows Max. But yeah, let's just get right to it. Craig, thank you for joining us. This was a Max suggestion. We're excited to have you, as our listeners know, because I set you up. You've been in the bubble, cutting hair for the NHL players. I'm sure staff. I'm sure everybody in the ancillary sort of area around the players. But before we get to sort of what life is like in the bubble and cutting hair, how did this come about? Actually, before that, how did you and Max become buds? Because it seems like Max might have had like a hand in you getting into that NHL bubble. So maybe talk about how you and Max became friends.
Yeah, so Max, I think it's like 6 years ago now. Max came in for, initially you came in for a t-shirt. You kind of popped your head around the corner. You saw someone at the coffee shop across the way.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you're like, hey, I like that shirt. I think you're looking for one for your show that night.
That's right. I wanted like a local spot to represent at the show in Edmonton. And we're talking Edmonton, Alberta right now. Yeah.
And we didn't have one. And then you're like, well, how about I cut? And I'm like, okay, end of the day, we can, I was busy that day, but like if you come back at 3 or something, I'll fit you in. And then that's when we first met. And then I remember you're like, how far is the Shaw from here? And I ended up driving you to the sound check or something that night.
Did you give me a lift?
I did, yeah. You're like, should I walk or should I Uber? And I'm like, man, I'm done. So I'll happily take you.
So, that's so like me to just be like, yeah, please give me the lift.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Not knowing I have no more demerits. I don't actually have a license, but.
Craig, were you like, did you know who the Arkells were? Were you like a fan?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think.
Cool.
Yeah. Big time. But to be completely honest, like, you know how it is with music or sometimes radio stuff, like you don't always know. When he walked in right away, I didn't know. I'm like, oh, that's Max from the Arkells. But I think I told you, Max, too. Is at Kaloha, one of those music festivals you guys played a while
That's
back.
right.
And these girls came up to us, like me and a buddy. You guys were on stage, and I think they must have been off their rocker, but they thought we were the Arkells. So, yes, we are. But yeah, I'm definitely. I've been a fan of the Arkells for a while. So,
like, I guess my question is, if you weren't a fan, would you have offered him the ride still?
I'm a nice guy, so yeah, I like helping. I was at the grocery store earlier tonight, and the girl ahead of me, I saw that she was having her card wasn't going to work, and I was getting full ready to be like, okay, how much is it? I'll get you, and if I'll tell you where I work. If you want to pay me back, you can, but if you don't.
And that girl was Taylor Swift, yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
So then Arkells would just kind of make it a point to get our haircut on tour and time it perfectly for when we were rolling through Edmonton. So basically everybody was like, okay, so Edmonton is the third week of the tour. Okay, everybody good till then, because we'd make it an occasion to come by your shop, get a haircut. We've done radio promo there instead of doing it at the radio station. We're like, can we just do it at Craig's place? Because you're in this beautiful, like, century-old, like, building. It's called the Mercer Building, and it's around the corner from Rogers Arena. And you've actually cut hockey players' hair there in the past, right? Like, who have been customers for you?
Dating back, it started with a guy named Alex Hemsky. I was a big fan of him, and he came through. And then, I could rattle them off. Like, actually, McDavid's been there, Hall, Nugent Hopkins, Petrie, Luke Gazdick. I think, is he a Hamilton?
Yeah, we know Luke. Yeah.
Gazdick, he was awesome. That was a great dude. I actually saw him at the Arkells show one of the times you guys came through, kind of thing. Bunch of random guys for sure. But the teams change over so fast that you might have 8 guys one year, and one of them's... I got one right now at the moment.
So we've been keeping in touch. You came down to Banff to see the band when you were in Toronto. I think we got together. And we were talking, Ash and I were talking to our friend Steve Mayer at the NHL, who does all of the content and just sort of event-related activities. And he was in the bubble in Edmonton. He's a New York City guy, but he was living out in Edmonton with all the teams. And we were like, hey, does anybody need a haircut there? Because we have just the guy for you. He's the best. And then Steve didn't say anything. He was like, okay, cool, leave it with me. And then so what did Steve do when he reached out? What did he say?
Yeah, he because you and I were talking, and then you're like, okay, hang tight. And then I didn't really know. Like, on one hand, I'm like, I don't think I could even go in if I had to live in the bubble. I don't know if it'd work. So, and then it was just a week later, I got a call from the NHL. Like, there's someone, they called the shop and left a message. So someone directly under Steve, I think, essentially just said there's like a lot of demand for haircuts inside the bubble. And if I don't come, they're going to have to cut it. Like, Steve's assistant's going to have to cut everyone's hair. Yeah. So, okay. I think we can make something work here. And yeah. And then, so they kind of gave me the pitch, what it'd be all about. Not having to live in the bubble was huge.
So describe, what was the protocol? Like, so what does this mean? Like, so when, like, how do you get tested? What was your daily agenda? What did that look like?
Yeah. I mean, there 3 times before I went into the bubble, I had to get tested. And it's nice. It's actually, that was a nice benefit, just having like COVID tests at will kind of thing during all this, and you don't get that brain poke in there. They literally tickle the inside of your nostril with a Q-tip when they on that one. So anyways, 3 tests before I went in, and then every day I was in, I had to do a test as well.
So wait a second, you're saying that the procedure is different? Because everybody else is just talking about the brain poke. Like, I've got the brain poke too.
Totally. And then when they said, all right, because it's either throat swab or like nose swab. And the first day I remember they're saying nose swab, I'm like, looking for a way out. I'm like, okay, I'm good. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, Max. But yeah, they literally just tickle if I was to say anything about it, it tickles a little bit. They just rim around your nose with a Q-tip. And that's so it was a breeze. It was easy.
Shane, Mike, ask any questions you want, by the way. I don't want to dominate this interview.
Why do they want their haircut?
You know what? Yeah, good question.
Like, why? Like, it seems like it doesn't matter, especially if you're an NHL player.
Like, it wasn't majority of the people. I did cut some of the known players that we'd all know, but for the most part, there was a lot of coaches, GMs. A group called the Taxi Squad. They were essentially like backups kind of thing. I felt bad. I felt the worst for those people, actually, because they're there, they have to practice, but they don't get a lick of game time.
Mm-hmm. Is this the goalie, like the thing that happened in the regular season with Carolina? Like, is this the backups you're talking about?
No, these are actually like players that likely will make the team. They're just not quite on the roster yet. They're essentially like call-ups, and they're only going to go in if there's an injury. So those guys would come get cuts, but yeah, a lot of players didn't really care so much. Like none of the I shouldn't say none of the key players, because there were some bigger names, I guess, but it was the coaches and GMs that I think really liked it. The guys without helmets, essentially.
Right.
Did you have any nerves about sort of cutting sort of the bigger names? Like, I mean, I know you've done Max Kerman from Arkells, but like,
it's all easy after that.
Yeah. Was there anyone that you did that where you're like, fuck, like if you said McDavid came into your shop, like, do you get a little bit extra juice where you're like, if I mess this up, it's kind of more significant than another time? Or do you just have this inherent confidence in your abilities?
Yeah, I would say I do. I'd like not to sound, cocky or anything like that, but I've cut so many heads of hair at this point in time. It'd more so be, if anything, more like, when GMs and kind of these like, not scary guys, but like they're intimidating. I don't know, just because of maybe their position or something like that. But I could see that being a thing, but it wasn't really because they're all such great guys in there. Like it was interesting to see. There's a really good culture kind of throughout hockey, and like you might think that there's like bad blood but they all know each other. They played somewhere, or they did a tournament or training camp or something. They all know everyone. So there's a pretty good
sense of camaraderie between all the guys.
Yeah.
What's the tipping like over there?
Yeah. I was glad they like it was, the NHL subsidized a daily rate for me. And then
tell us what that number was. What was that number?
$500 a day.
Nice.
Yeah. It was nice.
So even if nobody came into the shop, you're making $500.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. And then what was your rate?
And then $50 a cut.
Okay. Do you think you could have charged more in retrospect? Like I could have charged $100 a cut.
Well, that's kind of how it started. I was like, you know what? Like because the NHL wasn't initially going to subsidize anything. I'm like, it's not going to work because I have to drop everything in my life. I have to, go in and bring my chair and all this stuff. I don't have to charge the players $100, but I really wouldn't have felt comfortable doing that. So it was nice the way it worked out. Is $500 and then $50 a cut, and then tipping was encouraged, I guess, in the email that they sent out to all the players in like team services group and stuff like that.
Biggest tip you got was?
I think it's 20. There's a few 20. There's nothing like wildly outlandish or anything. But honestly, like being that I wasn't shampooing and stuff, like some of the cuts took 20, 25 minutes, I think. So I hate almost answering that question because I could sound ungrateful for, it was only $20, but.
Oh, well, when you're dealing with multimillionaires, you could say that, right?
Yeah.
It's all relative to how much they're making.
So here's my question though. If I was making, let's say $5 million a year and I was getting a cut in a bubble, I think I tip more than $20. Like I think I'm giving you $100 bill. Maxie, where are you at with that?
Oh, when I'm in Hamilton, I think I have to tip like 400% on anything I buy because people think I'm a millionaire. People think I'm like a $5 million man, which I'm not. So I'm always overcompensating. But I guess if you are just living that life always, I feel like the certain kind of guys love to tip a lot and it just like makes them feel good. Probably I'd be in that category to a degree. But a lot of them probably are thinking about, I got another kid on the way or something like that. And I can't be spending recklessly.
How much do you tip Craig Max? Max, how much do you tip Craig?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yes. I don't know.
Good question. Actually, Craig, we did a thing at Weekly where we got haircuts, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And we tipped you. We paid you a bunch of money.
It was very generous. Yeah, and the card it's down pinned to my corkboard downstairs in the office.
How much did we pay you?
Oh, it was a couple $100 for sure.
Nice.
There you go.
Whoa.
No big deal.
And really, like again, didn't like was just super grateful that him and the guys and Ash came in and Rob Loud actually.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, great hair.
Yeah, and like it was a kind of event that you can't really pay for. So I really didn't want anything or would never expect anything. But yeah, Max took care of.
And you got a free concert. Like an Arkells concert cost tens of thousands of dollars, and we played some songs in there.
Exactly, yeah.
So you're making a lot of money on our visit, really.
Yeah, totally. So
who was the best conversation?
I'd say the nicest guy. I've been asked the nicest dude or best vibe, like Ben Bishop, that goalie. He was with Tampa, now he's with Dallas. He's a great dude. Biggest stud would be Anders Lee from New York Islanders, the big captain, football star, quarterback.
What does stud mean? Like hottest guy, like most physically attractive?
Like who do I want to be if I'm being just big stud, big blonde stud.
That's the name of this episode, by the way. Yeah.
And then George McPhee, president, GM of Vegas Golden Knights, kind of biggest, kind of like, I don't know, coolest, most interesting guy.
Did he give you any dirt? Were you asking dirt on the bubble, like things that be like, "Ooh, I heard a rumor about this," or "What's so and so injured?" Anything like that?
No, yeah, those thoughts come to mind, but I always try. I was in life in general. I try not to ask anyone questions that they probably get all the time, like someone in a cast, like, "Oh, what happened?" Or any. I don't know. I try not to be too much of a jock sniffer either. I just want to be the cool guy that, just
good hair,
cuts hair, and likes good chat kind of thing.
The place Mike and I go to, before COVID times, was this guy named Tenzin, and he gives us a massage before a haircut. Do you give massage? And if not, what happens if you're asked to give a massage by a high-profile NHL player?
Like the shampoo massage?
No, this is actually on the chair, like a shoulder massage. Do you give those?
And a scalp deal. Tenzin, it was wonderful. Magic hands.
Like it's aromatherapy too. Like he put some stuff under my nose.
Oh, cool.
And then you pass out for 20 minutes.
I was energized all
Can we
cut.
get Tenzin in on this interview here too? I want to pick his brain now. Yeah, no, there's like, we try not to, is it ever awkward? Are you ever like...
No, because it's established though. And I guess that's what I wanted to ask you. Is there someone, since they're used to a certain way or people treating them a little bit better than most or extra service, does anyone ever say, "Hey, could you rub my shoulders"?
No. And
No?
You know what I used to do when I first opened Weekly, the place, because I was working for a fella for a long time. And then I'm like, okay, I'm doing my own thing. It's going to be a barber shop. And I went to the UK and I took like a straight shave course. And when I came back, that was one of the services we offered. And there's just something about like, I can cut your guys' hair much better than you guys ever could. And I feel like I'm doing something for you guys that you guys can't. But when I was shaving people, and this kind of falls like if I'm just, I don't know, told to rub some guy's shoulders, like, I don't know if this sounds bad or the way to say it, but like, I don't like feeling like someone's like servant almost, like you can shave yourself. I know there's like, it's a thing where it's like a relaxing, but I'm like, I'm like covered in the shaving cream and there's always like blood drawn. So I'm like, I don't know, just maybe I'm a bit of a germal, but anytime I feel like a servant, I'm really not into it. And that was actually a fear of mine going into the bubble. I'm like, are these guys going to see me like, "Hey, hair guy, cut me, or are they going to be very appreciative to see me in there and grateful?" And it was the latter for sure.
That's awesome. Are you like going in? Are you a big hockey fan in general? Like, so like, was this like a thrill because you're already a fan, or was it kind of whatever? It's just hockey. Yeah,
again, I kind of felt bad that like I was into it, but there was just certain things like I knew there were going to be long days. Cutting hair is hard. To answer your question, yeah, I am a fan and have always been a fan, like play hockey still. But yeah, I guess I haven't had much time these days to follow it kind of thing. So the thing that I thought was the coolest out of all this is like, I've always wanted to cut a coach's hair. And in one day I had, Vegas's president, Vegas's GM, director of hockey operations, a head coach, 2 assistant coaches. Like, to me, that was really cool. The kind of the older boys, they usually have the better stories and they've had more life, like more life experiences, I guess.
Craig, let's say that you made such an impression on the hierarchy of the Vegas Knights team that they said, "You are our guy. We've never had our hair cut this well before. Will you come down to Vegas? We will pay for you to live there." Would you relocate and go to Vegas to be the guy for that team in the future?
After talking to some of the guys, like some of the players too, they like, I've never seen anything other than the Strip in Vegas, and they all love it. But I mean, I doubt I'd be able to afford to live in the neighborhood that they speak of. I think the one guy said he's like Tony Robbins' neighbor and and some pro golfer. Max Pacioretty was saying this, but yeah, I mean, I love Canada. I don't think I could ever leave Canada, but that thought did cross my mind. I was hoping like maybe like Vancouver would be that team. They're like, "Hey, we need," and actually Vancouver's coach, Travis Green, I cut him. he's like highly superstitious. And they kind of had a bit of a comeback. They pushed Game 7 with Vegas, getting into it. So I was like, maybe we got something here, like. But then they got eliminated. So.
Oh man.
Okay, last question, Craig. You are famously known as like the best to hang. You're low key. You're sneaky handsome. You're good to everybody. But the one thing that you're kind of, I've never really told this to you, but kind of uptight about is the fact that we can't call you a barber. You're like, don't call Trim a barbershop. It's a hair salon. Tell me why. Tell us the difference between those two things and why I should stop insulting you.
Yeah. Okay. So again, never to like. I think you're probably bang on. There's some scars there. So my intro to hairdressing, I started working for, I think, one of the most talented, hardworking guys in the industry. And he's like very well-rounded, very trained,
Can I guess who that is?
Sure.
Vidal Sassoon.
No, that guy that's definitely the top. But like,
oh, okay.
As far as, that's a great guess, But so this guy is like highly inspired by Sassoon, and I've taken many Sassoon classes, but not to ever downgrade a barber, but like, so when Weekly opened, it was Weekly Barbershop and Boutique. And we did that for like 2 years, and sorry, where I was getting with this is for 7 years, I worked for this like highly trained, wide skill set guy. And then, so I got all these broad skills, and then we opened Weekly Barbershop thinking it could be like a unisex barbershop. And as soon as you see the title barbershop, and you guys can let me know what your opinion is like, oh yeah, dude, hangout, dude spot, like, so what do you get? And any female that would see it would just kind of automatically shut it down, kind of thing. So we really had to like axe it from the title, because nothing wrong with barbershops, but that just wasn't really our DNA. And so for so long, the barbershop title stuck around, and that's why I think I have to be like, no, stop. It's not a barbershop. We're a salon, and I don't want to call barbers like the worst thing. The worst example would be a one-trick pony, whereas like a hairdresser kind of, because some barbers are just clipper kings. They just run the clipper over your head, and and also we're kind of misleading. If we say we're a barbershop, you're going to expect no appointment. You just walk in, which we do if we can accommodate, but technically, usually we're booked. You expect a bit lower of a rate, and and maybe like a shave. So we're kind of letting people down when they, when we're going to use that title barbershop, and then we really aren't anything that the barbershop is. They're like, you guys are phonies.
Hair salon is more inclusive, is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, and we're big on that too. And like, of course, we want like anyone and everyone to come through our shop. And so we're just finding that wasn't really happening with the barber title.
That's fair.
Does that answer the question?
Mm-hmm, it does.
I'm glad you asked. It's on your shoulders for a while now, hey?
Shane, what are you going to say?
Oh, nothing. I was just going to ask if you get the reverse problem when it's a hair salon, because then you would get only women, maybe.
Yeah, that could for sure be a thing, and we were nervous about that too from the get go. Max has seen the one shop, and it is definitely more of like a neutral to masculine steez, and then we've just been around now for 7 years, so people kind of know. We actually have a much bigger female demographic, which isn't the worst thing. They
you make more money off women, probably, right?
You do, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nice.
But they are Kells. They're all guys, and so you got to make sure it's inclusive to everyone, and
it's true.
I would never want to do just guys, never want to do just girls or anything like that. Or
Craig, thanks for coming on, man. It's an interesting story to say the least, and it was interesting when I read there's a piece about you that Max is quoted in. Very, very complimentary. He actually called you handsome in the piece, which made me giggle. I'm like,
I like that.
I like that. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I know a girl that works at Global, and she sent us the thing, and she's like, I forget what her words were, but like, I wish my husband had the crush on me that Max does on Craig, or something like that. Just like and my wife gives me that all the time. Like sometimes I'll just, I'll pull up some. You guys had all the new music and videos and stuff coming out, and she walks in, she sees what I'm doing, she's like, "Oh, it's the Arkells again." Hey, it's just I really like what we have, Max. It's nice.
Me too.
Ah, well, it's awesome when these things work out. You guys have, this genuine connection. It seems to have got you into this bubble that seems to have been amazing for you. Thanks for coming on the podcast, man. It was great to talk to you. Shane and I have never met you, and maybe when we're in Edmonton, Shane and I can come by and get some haircuts.
How much would a haircut be for like normal people?
Yeah, you know what? So I actually don't take cuts anymore, but when I did, we got like 2 salons and a coffee shop I'm trying to run, and then a kid, and there was a COVID thing for a while, so I was charging $65.
Okay.
For my cuts, but again, it's not a barber cut. It's not done in 20 minutes. I take at least an hour, if not.
Are you seeing these locks? Me and Shane, like, this takes work, man.
I see you guys got some good hair, both. Yeah.
That's all I was looking for. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Yeah. just a hair compliment. Yeah. Shane, did you have anything more to say?
No. Who do you think has the best hair of the 3 of us?
I mean, Max. So, like, don't get too excited. Max, like, I've seen his hair on really good times and days, and then I think he maybe just gets it cut on the road sometimes, and maybe it's as today right now. Looking at these 3, yeah, I would say Shane.
Oh, great flow! It is a great.
It
flow.
is, yeah. He's got the Rob Loud vibes going on, Max.
Yeah, that's what Max said the first time I met Rob Loud. Actually,
yeah.
He's like, you guys have the same vibe.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm getting it. I'm picking up on it. Ash would be the one to ask. She's, she tracks Rob Loud's every move. So.
No, really? I didn't know that.
It's true. That is true. We're leaving that in for sure.
Craig, thanks so much, man, and all the best.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Nice meeting you.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Craig.